and welcome to another edition of the Mailbag. As I said in the rant this week, you guys are leaving lots of questions on the channel, which is really good. Just bear with me, it may take me a little while to respond to some of your questions because they are quite technical. But before we get going, let's do the parish notices. Why have you not subscribed? Hit the subscribe icon. If you want to be notified about when this sort of stuff hits the channel, it's the bell icon. Consider supporting how the channel is funded and how I produce videos. Go over to Patreon. It's a small donation. It's www.patreon.com/themusictechguy. The address is down there, as is my Instagram and Facebook feeds. Go check me out on there because that's where all the other nonsense that the channel gets up to is being pretty much loaded to. We are still in COVID-19, unfortunately, so it is stay alert, stay safe, wash the pinkies, and we will eventually get through this. But now back to the mailbag. So this is a bit unusual mailbag because what I normally do with the mailbag is I normally take comments across a number of different videos just to give you some sort of variety in the mailbag. But I've had so many comments about some videos that in order just to sort of clear the comments down, I kind of need to do what I'm doing with this mailbag and with the next mailbag, which is actually literally just address the comments from one video. And that one video is a Sunday morning rant I did in October last year, entitled "What the hell is ZENCore?" Now that has got so many comments that have kind of just built up that I haven't answered. So I've just decided I'm just going to go through all the comments and all the questions you guys ask and just nail it now. So here we go. Number one, left on the channel from XP50 Player, and he says, ZENCore is a combination of previous supernatural synth engine and the PCM engine dating back to the JPXP series, whereas the SN synth engine only had 3 oscillators, no cross mod, and a limited number of PCM samples to use in place of the VA oscillator. Now you have 4 oscillators and you can mix and match VA oscillator or any PCM samples in the ROM. You have several new cross modulation sync structures for pairs of oscillators. And I can't really disagree with any of that because it's all really informative. What I would say is, I mean, it's kind of expanded. It confirms my understanding of what ZENCore is all about. I'm aware that the new Jupiter and X and XM have 4 oscillators in them which follow this pattern. So, it is what it is. But I can't find any information on the groove boxes and how the groove boxes work. And we'll come on to that in a minute because there's more questions around this area, which we'll see sort of expands the answer. So I wrote back and said, can someone confirm these instruments also follow this pattern? So also follow this sort of this oscillator and generation pattern. XP50 Player then wrote back to me and said, the Jupiter XM groove boxes and RD88 are ZENCore instruments with the same library of ZENCore tones as the Fantom, and transferability, I'll get my words right, between piano EPs. Jupiter XXM has a transferability between several of them so far. Fantom uniquely has the V piano engine and now the Supernatural acoustics brass strings pianos EPs. The Jupiter XM has a unique ABM model engines aside from the standard ZENCore, which have also been alluded to in the Rolling Cloud Manager as future license expansions of the ZENology VST and or Fantom. Which kind of confirms even further my understanding in that the ZENCore generates the tone. So effectively, if you think about this sort of, we do lots of these diagrams in my job, which is sort of these funnel diagrams, and effectively what you've got sort of sitting down as the V point of the funnel here is you've got the ZENCore engine, and sitting on top of that is you've got all the tones, and the ZENCore engine, the ZENCore engine effectively serves these tones up to the modeling engine, and it's the modeling engine that does the funky stuff. That's kind of how I understand it. That's kind of how this this user is explaining it. The manufacturers are diverging at the moment, with the Kronos using a different sound generation depending on what engine you use. So what I'm trying to get across here is that the Fantom and the Kronos, even though they're kind of going after the same market, they're doing their thing, if you like, in a different way. Whereas what Korg are doing is, if you go on the Kronos, you've got all these different engines on the Kronos, and effectively what you do with the Kronos is you build your sound up within the engine. Whereas with the Fantom, you're taking the core set of sounds and you're manipulating them with the engine. And it sounds the same, but it is subtly different in the way they actually work. So, I mean, given that I have a Kronos, the brutal honest truth is I'm unlikely to buy a Fantom in the short term. But you know what? The Jupiter XM is looking extremely attractive at the moment. So the next one on the same subject of the same video comes from Brad Mize. And he says, by now I'm sure you're aware that the new ZENology VST that uses the ZENCore engine, they've also changed their subscription model to take entry into this world rather more affordable for those who don't want to or cannot afford the ultimate membership, which includes the kitchen sink. I already created my account. I'm waiting for the first month or so to get here so that my billing cycle will kick in where I want it. I'm going for the Pro option membership so I can start to get ZENology Pro, the editable version, included. I also found that interesting it will be able to move our creations between hardware and ZENCore hardware. If my understanding is correct, by the way, the RD88 stage piano is included in this. Great video, really enjoyed it. Keep up them coming. Well, thank you, Brad. First of all, yeah, I'm kind of aware that the subscription model has changed. It is really interesting how they've revamped the subscription model. But I also realised, having gone into my cloud account in the last couple of weeks, that somewhere between the original cloud version 1 and cloud version 2, Roland have managed to lose my System 1 and System 8 purchases, which I am kind of a bit narked about, if I'm honest. Because I'm now going to have to spend time digging out emails if I can find them. And I had a storage crash about less than a year ago actually, and I've managed to lose a lot of data in the storage crash. And I'll actually show you at some point. I'll show you the discs from the discs so you can see how bad the storage crash was. But looking into it a bit deeper, I've really concluded that the revamp was necessary to allow Roland to effectively publish patches, etc., to people who are owning the new Fantoms and Jupiters and whatever other instruments Roland are going to be pumping out in the short to medium term. So I do agree. I think the lifetime purchase is now a really good option for people, because it means that you don't have to keep paying money out if you want a license for a particular instrument. You can just buy that instrument straight out. And I think people will probably go into the trial and they will go for the lower option, because there is a junior option rather than the pro membership. So the pro membership is about $200 a year. The junior membership, just to actually allow you to access the Roland Cloud, is $30 a year, I think. It's not a lot. And then you've got the ultimate, which is considerably more. I think I've got those numbers right. Now the problem for me, to be honest, is I've said it before, I'll say it again, VSTs don't give me the organic feeling that I like when I'm playing. I just don't feel I'm connecting with the instrument through VSTs. Lots of people will really love VSTs and use VSTs a lot. It's just, for me, it kind of just doesn't work for me. It's probably why I surround myself with synths, because I just feel it's sort of kind of the contact thing. I like to feel the touch. I like to feel the knobs and faders and buttons, and you get the drift. And VST just being on screen just doesn't feel organic to me. It seems a bit remote and clinical. But you know, that's probably why I am a prolific collector of synthesizers. And the next one comes from Roy Mayer, and he writes, that's not totally correct in terms of what I said in the video that we're discussing. ZENCore is a base foundation that supports many different synthesis forms like PCM, virtual analog, physical modeling, and the ABB models that are in the Jupiter X. I have a Fantom and it comes with a V-piano physical modeling, virtual analog, and the old PCM synthesis. The virtual analog sounds amazing, better than SNS of the Jupiter 80. The V-piano is good too, and the PCM synthesis is just there to cover some of their legacy stuff. And well, I said basically, I mean, you and XP50 have made pretty much the same observation. My understanding of ZENCore has moved a bit, I have to be honest. I mean, since I made that video, which was now, we're now June, so that's 9 months ago, almost, between me making that video and today and responding to that video. And I have to say my understanding of ZENCore has moved quite considerably, because as people have started to buy ZENCore engines, Fantoms and Jupiters, etc., you know, and started making videos on YouTube, you start to understand a bit more about how the technology all hangs together. But that's life, you know. You make a video, you make a statement, and because it's been put to camera, everybody sees that statement, even if your understanding's moved on. My understanding, which is kind of backed up by XP Power, is still ZENCore supplies the tones that are shaped by the engines. I haven't seen it. Again, it's one of those. That's kind of my understanding. That's kind of what seems to be out there, and nobody seems to be rebuffing that kind of understanding now. Or is Roy saying that the individual engines are generating the tones, which is not my understanding, and that's kind of more the Kronos model than there seems to be the Fantom model. So, anyone out there want to have a comment on this? It seems to be a very commentable subject. And next one, same video. Thanks. By the way, I don't know if you've looked at the prices or not. Seen that Venom sell for $19. That is probably due to the fact that a lot of people don't really care for it, due to the fact that you can't program new signs from the keyboard itself. You have to use a software-based editor. The one that comes bundled with it is extremely buggy, creates the impression it's unusable because the synth was orphaned by the manufacturer, meaning it's no longer supported when Avid bought M-Audio. Yeah, I remember that well. There are alternatives to the bundled software editor, though. You might be able to program it using a knob and slider box-type MIDI controller, one with lots of knobs and sliders, which allows you to assign parameters to each knob and slider. I have a Venom and brought such a box years ago, but I've never really got round to trying it. Partly because my Venom needs repair. After getting bumped off a keyboard stand, oh, I do feel sorry for you that when that happens. It became a bit glitchy, and just haven't got around to repairing it yet. There are other software editors that you can use, I'm sure. I've also seen people using things like Touch OSC and other MIDI controllers to program sounds. It's definitely a synth to have in your arsenal, and it's very affordable and easy obtained. Wishing you the best of luck. Well, this was actually I did a response to Ryan. Probably about 3 or 4 months ago, actually, and this was his response to me. Now he's talking about the M-Audio Venom, which, how do I put it, wasn't bad. It was a mid-price synthesizer. It was produced by M-Audio when M-Audio were going through their sort of phase of actually producing synthesizers rather than just pure controller equipment. So they sort of kind of came up with this sort of virtual analog oscillating modeling synth called the Venom. And I do feel sorry for people who have keyboards or equipment knocked off tables. I can remember playing many years ago where one of the drunken revelers decided he was going to get on the stage and sing with the singer, much to the singer's disgust, I might add. And he was so paralytic that he went backwards into the drum kit, and then while he was recovering from the drum kit and the drummer was on the floor behind me, managed to stumble straight into the keyboard stack that I was using and knocked one of the keyboards off the stand and cracked all the casing for it. Of course, at that point you're sort of like, everything stopped, everything went into sort of complete disorder. But the bottom line was that keyboard case was cracked beyond repair. I did try sort of aerodyting it for a bit, but it really did look naff, and I ended up getting rid of the keyboard. It was just, to be honest, it was just good. It wasn't one of my favourite keyboards. It was just something I had for a bit of reinforcement and some synth lead stuff. But I do have sympathy, because that's the worst nightmare, is when somebody goes barreling into your keyboard stack or into any equipment, to be honest. But Ryan, since we first exchanged on the subject, I have had my eye out for a Venom. I sort of kind of thought, well, I might give it a go. I saw one float across eBay a little while back, but I really didn't get my socks in gear. I was kind of in the middle of moving at the time, so I was packing everything up, and I really couldn't purchase anything else. I just didn't have anywhere to put it, to be honest, because I was kind of living out of boxes either end of the house move. But I wasn't quick enough. But what I will say is I will try and get one. I will try and sort of feature it on the channel. If I don't get on with it, you know what, I can always sell it on. But the other thing I do know, and I sympathise with anyone who was caught in the whole sort of avid purchasing M-Audio, because it resulted in a whole real rationalisation of the M-Audio line. I think what Avid wanted a series of controller keyboards that could sit alongside Avid's production software, so Pro Tools being the sort of big name there. That's kind of what I think Avid wanted, and therefore anything in the M-Audio range that wasn't pure Surface controller orientated pretty much got dropped out of the line, or anything that hadn't been integrated, wasn't core, it just all got washed away. And I felt particularly aggrieved, if I'm honest, by this whole sort of Avid merger with M-Audio, because I had literally just bought a 61.0 M-Audio Axiom Air 61 controller keyboard, and it was really nice. It was white, and it was 61 notes, and it sort of had this lovely chassis on it, and it didn't actually look too bad when you stuck it on a keyboard stand, because all the other keyboards were black, and you had this lovely white keyboard. But I actually kind of bought it for travelling, because at that point in time I was travelling a lot, so it was easy to sling it in the boot of the car and disappear off somewhere, and then just get your laptop out, plug the controller keyboard in, and all of a sudden you could play. So in the previous videos, me saying about VSTs, that was kind of how I used to use VSTs when I was away travelling, so I could just take it into a hotel room and sit there playing. But the other side of it, the other reason why I bought it was because I use Pro Tools, and this keyboard was stated to be completely integrated to Pro Tools. Was it integrated? Was it? What's it? It couldn't even move a slider in Pro Tools. The software was so bad that it was, there was lots of people on user groups at the time basically shouting at M-Audio to pull their finger out. And of course, M-Audio weren't going to do anything because they were in the process of being purchased. Avid weren't doing anything because they didn't want to support the keyboard. So, anybody who had invested in a keyboard, because it was stated to be tightly integrated with Pro Tools, basically was the wrong end of the checkbook. and I feel particularly aggrieved over that because the keyboard itself, or the controller keyboard itself, wasn't cheap. It was 300 quid. I'm sure it was in that sort of area anyway. And I could have bought cheaper ones, but I went for this one because of the integration to Pro Tools. But there you go. Another one of those manufacturers' promises that's never come to fruition. So the lesson to be learnt there, keyboard players out there, is if they say something is coming, don't buy it until it's arrived. And unusually, for me, I've actually got 5 responses. I normally do 4, but that's because I'm trying to think how many responses I went through on the ZENCore video. I must have had 20 responses or 20 comments on the ZENCore video, some of which I didn't think were actually worthy of doing this kind of exercise with, so I kind of answered those directly and didn't bother doing this sort of format. But these were the 9, if you like, so it's 5 in this one and 4 in the next one that were worthy of comment. And this one's from Aldrich Zek Walter. I think I've got that right. And he writes, again against the same video, so for the 808 HH, I assume this means hi-hat. For example, ACB was reproducing those random noise generator. Now with Zen, it's back to a static one-shot sample. And Aldrich, I sort of kind of have to disagree slightly with your statement. So ACB, analog circuit behavior, works by modeling how the circuitry works. So how the original circuitry generated and manipulated the sound. There's no random generation in there whatsoever. So I'm not quite, that sort of doesn't ring right. Unless, of course, the original source was a random generation, which it wouldn't have been for the hi-hat, because the hi-hat would have been going... So... but you're correct that the heart of the ZENCore is samples. So, at the end of the day, the PCM sample of the thing going is what the ABC ACB circuitry will generate. The issue really is ACB is very specific to the instrument that it is generating the sound for. The tone is generated in a specific way each time you trigger the tone, whether that be a drum sound, or whether that be a synth sound, or whether that be a piano sound. Whatever tone you are generating, however it was generated on the original instrument, that is how ACB will generate it on the boutique or Aria or something that is using that ACB technology. But what we have discovered is that it is very intensive in terms of system resources. So that kind of is why Roland have alluded that the ACB can't be expanded much beyond where we've got it at the moment in terms of things like polyphony, simultaneous voices, etc., etc. So they've kind of said that while the whole sort of boutique stuff will continue, it might not necessarily continue in the format that we've currently got it. Roland have also said that the boutique stuff really was done as a bit of a, showman area, and now the boutiques are now going into more mainstream long-term production, because what they did was, with a lot of the early boutiques, they only did limited production runs. So if you got the limited production runs, you got your boutique. If you didn't get your limited production runs, now in the second-hand market, the boutiques are selling for more than they were selling originally when you bought them, because they are now in short supply and people are realizing what they were and what they want them to be. ZENCore, on the other hand, because it works on this sample basis, it's not having to generate the tone. Therefore, the resources on the keyboard, instrument, whatever you want, can be used for other stuff. So, you can aim them at the arpeggiation, additional voices, filters, additional oscillators, all this sort of additional stuff that may not have been on the original instrument, but you can now put onto a new updated instrument using the whole ZENCore piece, because you haven't got to spend a lot of resources generating the signal in the first place.